That Nissan Leaf was only had 29,000.
and level 27, and I have with me today Councillor Richard Hills and several staff, including the Chief Executive, Jim Stabbock. I'll now ask Sandra to do a roll call to ascertain who is present online.
Thank you, Mayor Wayne. Deputy Mayor Simpson.
I'm here, thanks, Sandra.
Councillor Baker.
Present.
Councillor Bartley. Councillor Dalton.
Present.
Councillor Darby.
Morena.
Councillor Ferry.
Morena.
Councillor Filipaina. Councillor Fletcher.
Morena.
Councillor Foley. Councillor Henderson.
Morena.
Councillor Hills.
Kia ora.
IMSB member Kake.
Kia ora.
Councillor Lee.
Present.
Councillor Leone.
Kia ora.
Councillor Newman.
Good morning, Sandra.
Councillor Sayers.
Present.
Councillor Stewart.
Good morning.
Councillor Walker.
Present.
Councillor Watson.
Present.
Councillor Williamson.
Present.
And Councillor Foley is online. She's just having a problem with her mic.
Sorry, working now. Kia ora, morena, everyone.
Thank you.
Was Councillor Turner not there? I thought I heard him.
Councillor Turner, are you there?
Okay.
He's online.
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Back to you, Mayor Wayne.
Are there any apologies?
I have received none.
Are there any call for declarations? No declarations. Righto.
There's no public input.
No public input section? Okay. Good morning, councillors. I want to start by acknowledging the incredible effort of the people of Auckland in the face of two major weather events in the last fortnight. First, the flooding on the 27th of January, and now the cyclone Gabriel over the last 3 days. Your resilience, courage and determination in the face of these challenges has been truly inspiring. I also want to extend my sincerest gratitude to the Emergency Management Centre and all the emergency responders who have been on the job 24/7 over the last 2 weeks. Their tireless work and dedication has been exceptional, and I will never forget their huge contribution. I also want to acknowledge the efforts of all the councillors and local board members who have been in the front and centre of their communities during this time, helping, supporting and encouraging those in need. Your concern and support has been evident throughout, and thank you all. Finally, I want to assure councillors that lessons have been learned from the recent events, particularly regarding communication from my office on the 27th of January. Thank you all for your hard work and dedication to our communities. My thoughts go out to the people in other regions and their council as the cyclone Gabriel moves down the country. Thank you. Now, local board input.
No local board
No
input.
local board input. Extraordinary, no known extraordinary items. Right, the first thing is the draft Te Puna Mongi Authority operational plan. Paul Majuri, are you present somewhere?
Kia ora.
I'd like you to address this. This purpose is to recommend the approval of the draft Te Puna Mongi Authority operational plan 2324 and the draft summary of the Te Puna Mongi Authority operational plan for inclusion in the consultation material for the annual budget.
We have to put a mātua, Mayor Brown. Just checking, you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you. We'll take the paper as read, and I want to make several notes in advance of the consideration of the paper. The first is that, as the paper discusses, the structure is one whereby the Tupuna Authority and Auckland Council undertake their respective processes. For the Tupuna Authority, at our January meeting, the authority unanimously approved the annual operational plan. Also confirming, as I think was confirmed at the workshop, that we're within the 10-year plan numbers, so no new money is included in this proposed operational plan. Having said that, I've heard very clearly the call from the Mayor in terms of making savings for the obvious reasons in terms of the challenges that the council group faces. And as we've done previously with emergency budgets, we'll be working over the course of the next several months to identify those savings so that by the time the final plans are approved, those are locked in. I've touched on the workshop. A number of questions were asked there and they've been answered as I understand it. And finally, just to note, as you're all aware, this is for approval for the proposed operational plan to go out for consultation, and the process will be undertaken to consider those submissions that are received. Kia ora, Mayor.
Thank you. I think we'll ask for a mover and a seconder to agree the draft Tupuna Maunga operational plan and a summary of the draft plan for inclusion in the consultation. I'm happy to move that as a seconder.
I'll second Councillor Dalton.
Thank you. Okay, questions? Okay, there will be no further opportunity to ask questions.
Yes, Councillor Fletcher.
Excuse me, I put my hand up.
Humble apologies.
No trouble. I was a bit slow, Mr. Mayor.
Righto.
This has all been really rushed with a whole bunch of stuff in the middle of it. And, you know, so I never actually spoke when it came to the vote at the Maunga meeting. And I never objected either, but it all happened very quickly. I also have sent in an email challenging the minutes that I was provided after the meeting because it hadn't noted that I had questions and put questions in, and that I'd been instructed, or the staff had been instructed to work with me. They have done, and we've had a very, very good and informative meeting. I have got the answers to my questions. It doesn't mean that I necessarily agree with them. There was a couple of extra things I talked about when I was with the staff, and one of them was the bid to become a World Heritage Site, etc. Look, and there has been slips and damage to walkways in the interim. I just want to make the point that, you know, in a natural justice sort of way, this seems to be very pushed. I'm very pleased with Mr. Majuri's comments about looking for the savings that we need to make across the board. And I'm sure they'll do a good job at doing that. But I want to know what my vote does here today. You know, I've been, as a layperson in this stuff, really, I went in this thinking this is a draft and it's negotiable. And I'd also asked the staff several times to outlay to me that we can, you know, relitigate this right up to the adoption of the council's annual budget. And I was told, oh yes, but that is not what is said whenever I'm in front of a group of people. So, you know, I think I did make the comment to the staff. I know this is a totally different beast, but when I looked at it, it looks very much like the 22nd local board. It has a local board type structure in how it works, including the fact that a lot of the full facility contracts are done through council and the money is clawed back out of the authority's budget. And they do it through the procurement department too in some situations, which is that they could maybe make heaps of savings by doing it themselves. Another question, another discussion, I know, but there's a lot to be talked about rather than just say, bam, let's go with this. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. It is actually what your vote for today is will to be to send this to consultation. And when things go to consultation like this and our main budget, that means we will be hearing from all the people put in there, and it will come back for us to review what the consultation tells us, and that may well produce additional savings or changes. So that's what you're voting for. Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. And following on from Ken, I realise that this is about consultation, but I have to say that the written answers that I have received to the questions that were posed by Councillor that's just spoken haven't actually dealt with all of the concerns that I've got. The specific questions around where we're trying to find savings, how successful the Love Umanga events have been, the issues around the pest-proof fencing, the detailed breakdown of details around tree felling versus plantings. I realise that this is for consultation, but I still have questions, and I don't know whether this is the forum today to raise it. The security budget escalations, is it just about Guy Fawkes? Is it there are other bits of information that I would like to know, so I'm just trying to establish whether I just abstain on the vote today, let it go up for consultation, and continue to work with staff on this to try and get a bit more detail.
Thank you for that. That's your decision, of course. Are there further questions? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those who agree that this should go out for consultation, please say aye.
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 To the contrary?
I'm
No.
against.
No.
So do I record?
Yes,
Call
please.
for a division.
Fletcher,
Councillor
Turner.
Councillor Foley's actually just called for a division.
Councillor, would you actually call for a division there, or are you happy to have those two people record there?
I'll call for a division, Your Worship.
Okay, right. I was just crackling because two people spoke at once. So if you wish to have a division, does she need a seconder for that?
No.
Okay, we're having a division. Sandra
Okay.
with an R will carry out the division.
Councillors, please indicate yes or no. Councillor Baker.
Yes.
Councillor Bartley.
I actually don't know what I'm doing here because I voted against the whole budget going out for consultation. But I'm not going to do that here then because I haven't received any advice of what to do in this situation. But I will just go for.
Thank you. Councillor Dalton.
Yes.
Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Ferry.
For.
Councillor Filipina. Is not online. Councillor Fletcher.
no.
Councillor Foley.
Yes.
Councillor Henderson.
For.
Councillor Hills.
Aye.
IMSB member Kake.
For.
Councillor Lee. Could you unmute Councillor Lee?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Leone.
For.
Councillor Newman.
Yes.
Councillor Sayers.
No.
Deputy Mayor Simpson.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
No.
IMSB Chair Taipere.
He's just sent me a text to say for. He's got communication issues.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
No.
Councillor Watson.
Yes.
Councillor Williamson.
No.
Mayor Brown.
For.
So that is carried 15 votes to 7.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll move to the annual budget. Thank you, Mr. Majuri. You can go now if you like.
Kia ora, Mayor.
I'll move to the annual budget communications and engagement plan. Somewhere or other, who's representing that?
Kenneth.
Kenneth. Hello.
Kia ora koutou. Morena, Mr. Mayor and councillors. So we presented at the workshop last week in terms of the approach for the communication engagement plan and how we'll go about ensuring that we're inclusive of all Aucklanders. Given the consultation period begins on the 20th of February and runs through for 4 weeks until the 28th of March. This is an opportunity, obviously, for us to ensure that we hear from Aucklanders on the issues in the consultation document and anything else they'd like to raise, which is likely, as you can all assume, will be in relation to the emergency situation we're in now. In addition, we're looking to drive awareness of the consultation through prominent mentions in communications. We're in phase 2 now, or ending phase 1 of raising awareness and going into phase 2 at the end of this month in terms of making sure people know where they can give it, how they can give their feedback through various channels, digital or online, face-to-face at hui or have your say events, and through written communications, as well as telephone for those who prefer that. We're obviously designed our approach to ensure that we can flex or pivot as a consequence of the emergency situation we're in. And so we will monitor the situation and see whether we can do things, if we need to do things differently. And we also have the independent survey that's been proposed to ensure that we can get a representative sample of Aucklanders participating in the process who can give us complete answers to all the questions that are being asked in the survey, which is still to be finalised. The other point being that the consultation feedback form is part of a democratic process which allows for Aucklanders to just answer the questions that they want to answer, not necessarily all of them, which is their right. But we obviously encourage to ask as many questions as they can so that we have a fuller picture of their views on the issues. I have with me on the call Victoria Walker from the Communications Department, GM, and representatives from Ngāti Matarai, Marama, and Bernadette can also answer questions about the Māori engagement approach that's been designed for this consultation process. We're open to questions should you have any, Mr. Mayor or councillors. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley has a question.
Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, everyone. I know it's probably too late in the piece to ask this, but because I want to make sure that our communities get heard on this, because it is vital that they are, considering what's being proposed to be cut is going to affect our vulnerable communities the most. So how do we ensure that they are heard seriously? And, you know, I don't want them to turn up to a have your say. It gets noted on a big jotter pad and then gets fed back somewhere in a report that doesn't really hit us. So what about going back to hearings? Because I know some people say hearings are not friendly for community, but that is a way that they are actually given the time, put in front of all governing body and heard by all of us, as opposed to a forum in the public, which we may turn up, we may not, and staff take their notes and forward it to us.
Thank you for the question. I know I've got Tamsin and others on the line. Hearings, Councillor Bartley, obviously one way that we can provide a process to hear from our communities and take into account their feedback. We're confident that the ways that we've got available in the timeframe that we have and the fact that we're willing to flex to see what else might be needed or what we might need to change as a result of, there might be difficulty for people to access the events and activities that we've got planned. We think that will be sufficient, but we'll certainly consider what you're saying. Should we need to change tact over the 4-week period, so that we can, as I said earlier, flex where necessary. But there are multiple different avenues and channels that have been provided. Yes, our Have Your Say events, we are working specifically with targeted groups to ensure that they can be present. But if we get an indication that we will need to look at other ways of doing things, we're going to be open to that as well. But I do appreciate the question asked, and we will obviously continue to think about how we can do things differently in light of the situation. Thank you.
Can I have any more questions?
Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder.
Is there a way that I can move an amendment to require hearings as part of this process?
She can. Yes,
I would be happy to second Councillor Bartley's amendment if she's putting that up. It's Councillor Newman.
Okay, so now you deal with the amendment, and Councillor Bartley has moved to include hearings as part of this process, and it's been seconded by Councillor Newman.
Okay.
You can take discussion on that now.
So that's hearings as well as what we're normally doing with our Have Your Says.
Yes, include hearings.
Yeah.
Any discussion on that? Councillor Hills?
I won't be supporting this in my experience, and the evidence we've seen is that hearings generally favour certain demographics who can get to the town hall in the middle of the city, and also potentially take up several weeks if we were to accept everyone. For us sitting in the town hall, where I'd prefer to be, and I'm sure many others would prefer to be in the community, talking to communities as opposed to the hearing. So I think it's good to have a mix and maybe a conversation for next time, but I think we don't know the parameters of what those hearings would entail, how much time it would take, or even if there was, I just think to make the decision right now, we wouldn't actually know what we could do, and I assume the budget we've set for the consultation would have to take away from outreach to communities, because there'd be a lot more budget spent on town hall meetings in the
Be careful what you wish for, in other words. Councillor Henderson?
Yeah, thanks. Briefly, I won't be supporting this either, respectfully. I do understand that, you know, there is an argument we need to provide as many channels as we can to try and get to as many people as we can, but I think we should be sort of taking some of the less traditional ways to do that and actually amplifying voices that don't get the sort of same level of access to councillors in the council process than maybe some of the more organised groups do. Since this has all come out through the summer, I've been completely mobbed, I guess, from people that have contacted me with their views on the budget. Some of which are, you know, quite passionate, as we West Aucklanders always are, and a lot of people that haven't engaged in this kind of process before and have felt compelled to do so. So if we go down the path of kind of the more traditional route of hearings and those kinds of things, that doesn't empower them, and so for that reason, I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, my comment is around the fact that I'm really sad this wasn't brought up in the workshop, so we could actually have a look at the realities and the practicalities of us, one, fitting this up and doing it properly. Councillor Bartley, I'm understanding what you're saying, and I think that the hearings process potentially could happen in sub-regionally, like in the local board areas as part of the local Have Your Say. The reason I am loath to go for the hearings in at the town hall is you are assuming everybody from the very top of Rodney and the very bottom from where Andy comes from are able and should travel all the way to the town hall. And frankly, I just don't think that's practicable. But I am keen, and it's like most of you, I would think, to let people have their say in person to 1, 2 or 3 more than just one councillor. We do have online, and I think the online, everyone hopefully can access that at a suitable time, so they could have that opportunity. But look, I don't want to be undemocratic. I absolutely believe everyone should have their say, but I am worried about the practical implications. Having chaired hearings myself, as some of you know, we have been in the town hall where people have cancelled at the last minute. We've had huge gaps. We can't bring people forward. It's just based on the size of this region, it's very difficult to practically deliver. I think we should take the concept of the hearings and work it better through local board area by local board area. So to that end, I cannot support the hearings based on the fact that traditionally we have done them in the town hall. Thank you.
Through the chair, if I could just add, the Have Your Say events are styled to be hearing style, so people and groups at the events can provide their views, and we'll continue to encourage that across the local boards for the events that they have planned. As Councillor Simpson also touched on, the resourcing required to do that, given the size of our region and the focus that we've got within the organisation on the current emergency and the community groups that we're looking to support this, we think that I think personally that would make it very difficult to stand it up at the scale that is being proposed, and given all the other implications I think that we talked about in terms of elected member availability. However, our commitment is to ensure that the Have Your Say events are hearing style, and to ensure that we get a lot of people along to those so that we hear their views through that process.
Thank you. That makes my democratic comment feel much more sound. I'm really pleased with that. Thank you so much.
Councillor Lee, please.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and colleagues. I have to support strongly Councillor Bartley's amendment. Now, of all times, is the time for us to open the doors and to listen to the people of Auckland who we are meant to represent. And now is a time also to take seriously our sworn obligations under the Local Government Act. And I refer members to have a read of section 76, decision making, 78, community views in relationship to decisions, and section 82, principles of consultation. All too often the council in recent years has ignored these obligations and put its own convenience, the convenience of elected members and the convenience of management ahead of the requirements of the Act and ahead of showing respect to the views of the people of Auckland. If the size of the region, which is incidentally the smallest region in the country, was a consideration, one would have fear for the hallowed Parliamentary Institute of Select Committee hearings. Regardless, select committee hearings go on, regardless of that they're New Zealand wide. So I think these are excuses. I think if we look in the mirror, the council is putting its own convenience ahead of its requirements under the Local Government Act, and certainly putting its own convenience ahead of opening the doors and having genuine consultation as defined by law with the people of Auckland in this most critical of all budgets. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been my experience in previous budgets and long-term plan processes that there have been hearings for certain groups, that has occurred. I think I recall people like the Property Council and whatnot having their own segment to come in. I may be mistaken in that, but that certainly has happened in the past. I'm really trying to decipher now what Kenneth has said in respect of the hearings type format that will be available at the local level. I too, like Councillor Lee and some of the other members have spoken, I support the notion of hearings. I know if I was wanting to present to the council myself, I'd rather be speaking to the assembled group as opposed to perhaps having little stick tapes or filling in a questionnaire. I'd want to have my 5 minutes or whatever it might amount to. So I strongly support that principle, that formal principle, and I think a lot of people in the community do as well. And I don't just mean traditional people who have presented in the past. I think there's a lot to be said for speaking directly, as indeed happens with select committees. I mean, if we were to extend that analogy, then as Councillor Lee said, that would be too difficult, and all manner of people would be cut out. So that's contradictory, really. If it's good enough for Parliament, especially at this time in our council's history and the challenge that are facing us, it should be good enough for the Auckland Council. So I guess, Mr. Mayor, it seems to me there's two ways to go here, certainly for the proponents of this. Is one that we try to hastily convene something that might cater for this amendment at the town hall in the city, or that there's a bit more detail given as to Kenneth's suggestion that might be more robustly catered for at the local level than has been the case in the past. So it is a little hard to kind of think on the feet at the moment as to how that might pan out. But I will be supporting the amendment because I support the principle of budgets and long-term plans being open to hearings with members of the public. Thank you.
Councillor Dalton, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, I support Councillor Bartley, and I support what Councillor Lee said as well. I think we have moved a long way away from listening to our people. Now, I understand the dilemma here and that it's going to be very, very difficult to try and stand something up for this consultation, and perhaps Councillor Bartley might consider that it becomes part of an LTP discussion, that more investment goes into how we hear from our communities, and that leads to greater democracy. I mean, sometimes these hearings can be very pleasant and sometimes very unpleasant. It comes with the job. It's our job to listen to people. And if that means our job is not sitting in the town hall, but going out to our local board areas to listen, then that is what we do. That's such a big part of what we are elected to do, is to listen to the people. The way this happens doesn't work for everybody. We have multiple other channels. I understand that, but since the beginning of the Super City, when we were holding hearings, the value was immense, and that meant that our people from all over Auckland felt like they were being heard. Some people like to sit in front of the governing body and talk to the governing body. Some prefer not to. Some will want to go online. Have your says have been great, but they're not always, when it's not the main event. One of our have your says is our bilingual hikoi. Our people are coming to hikoi. I don't think they're going to spend a lot of time listening to the annual plan consultation. That's from my experience anyway. So deliberative democracy is where we need to get to. We need to get to citizens' assemblies. It probably needs to be part of the LTP discussion. But thank you, Councillor Bartley, for bringing it forward. I do support the hearings process. Thank you.
Councillor Newman, please.
I was really quite taken back when an officer indicated that what was proposed wasn't practicable, given that what has been proposed hasn't been fully declared. I mean, my view as a seconder is that, the assumption here is that it will be at the town hall. Hearings can be a combination of in-person and online, in my view, and it doesn't necessarily have to be at the town hall. The region is large and regional councillors should travel to different parts of it. And I think that being an elected member means that you have to be willing to sit through a hearing where people tell you things that you don't agree with. I was never keen on doing away with hearings when officers proposed it during the era of Stephen Town. My view has always been this is in addition to, not instead of. And that's been a point of my approach to consultation. Unfortunately, we've tried several times previously to bring hearings back. It hasn't worked because the support hasn't been there. But I think that the idea that this is all just going to be too difficult and it only appeals to a very narrow group of Aucklanders who want to come to the town hall and that they can have access to it. Well, that's one group of Aucklanders who may feel that that's an important means for them to engage, and we should accommodate them. It does not mean that we exclude have your say. It does not mean that we exclude the other things that we want to do. This is an important budget that will affect people. So thank you, Councillor Bartley, for raising this. I think that it would be good for us to have a vote and to include hearings. Not every Aucklander is going to want to appear in person, but for those that wish to, they should be heard in that way. They are all key stakeholders, not just Property Council.
Councillor Baker, please.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to be voting against it. I agree with what the Deputy Mayor has said. And the reason I'm voting against it is because this should have been raised before today, and to expect staff now to have to charge around and try and organise a hearing. Having sat in front of the governing body over a long period of time, I don't think I've ever had a room full of people, and often there was less than 50% of the councillors sitting around the table listening to local boards. And certainly the people from Franklin were very, very frustrated when they made the effort to come into the city. I support trying to do something hearings-wise locally or sub-regionally. I just don't believe that today is the time we should be saying get stuck into it, staff. As you can see, Ken is sitting there in his high vis and has been busy working in the community. So I've always been a fan of hearings. I just don't believe that today is the last minute rush that we should be supporting it.
Councillor Sayers, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. It's just probably more procedural question. I assume this isn't an addition, so it is an amendment. So that'll be going to the vote, Chair, and then incorporated into the substantial to be voted on in full. I'm correct on that process?
Yes, you are, Councillor Sayers.
Thank you. And I guess if everyone wants to call for division on it, they can, but that's up to individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thank you, Your Worship. Look, my comments are very similar to Councillor Baker, where I think that this is probably a conversation that we need to have going forward and looking at how we can incorporate hearings at a local, sub-regional, online as well, to allow as many people as possible to attend hearings, perhaps for the next round of consultation. But I don't think, I wouldn't want to put that pressure on our staff now. I mean, I know that Councillor Bartley is out there on the ground, as many of us have been, but our staff are also, they've been manning our CD centre 24/7. So I wouldn't want to put that pressure on our staff now. But I'm not opposed to having this conversation and looking at planning something properly for the next round and seeing how we can improve on that hearings process. I would not want to go back to the old hearings process where everyone was expected to come into the town hall, because certainly that did exclude people from my ward, from most of South Auckland and from, you know, areas like Franklin and some of the islands where it's just so difficult. Over time, we have developed and changed and adapted the process, the consultation process out in Manukau, and what we have now works really well. The Have Your Say events where people can sit around in small tables and have those discussions, and we always have councillors present and local board members and working in that shared governance space. The councillors and the local board members sit with the public and they hear the public, and their role in that Have Your Say event is to sit and hear what people have to say, and our officers record what's being said, and that all feeds into the process. So I will vote against it for that reason, but I'm open to considering how we might incorporate hearings to work alongside what we're already doing, and in a different form to what it previously was, so that it would be more inclusive and allow more of the voices from across all of Tāmaki Makaurau to be heard. Kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Foley. Councillor Turner, please.
Thank you. I've listened to both sides. Everybody has really good points. I absolutely will be going to the Henderson Massey Local Board office and the Waitaki Rangers Local Board office and holding a hearing if I'm allowed access in that manner. If not, I'll have to do it privately, but that's what I'm happy to go and meet everyone halfway. I think if that could be stitched in somehow, that would be good. I support a hearings mechanism. It doesn't have to be in the town hall. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Walker, please.
Sure, I support hearings, and in particular I support some hearings that are of a regional nature.
Sorry, Councillor Walker, could you speak up please? You're very low.
Certainly, can you hear me better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, so I certainly support hearings. I support hearings that are of a regional nature. I wouldn't have thought there was much difficulty at all having those hearings in the town hall, and people can participate online. By all means, if there are also hearings in the north, south, east and west that are focused on regional issues, that's fine. We've done that in the past. I really see little issue about organising such hearings events, because we've done it many times in the past, and I would have thought that the easiest hearings meetings to organise would be the ones in the town hall where we've got the technology. As much and all as people might not be able to get there, we're set up for doing things remotely now. People could always attend another venue to engage remotely if they can't do it on their own device. Going back to my point, if ever there was a time to confront regional issues across Auckland and have some hearings around that, that time is now. Thank you.
Councillor Williamson, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to repeat what I said at the council meeting the other day, and I said it was so well received, I'll just say it again. If any Minister of Finance was trying to prepare a budget and had to in any way go and consult with the broadest community, he'd never, or she would never get a budget done. This is a conflicting issue where you've got to try and work within incredible constraints about what will give you a budget, and to be able to say, well, we're going to give expectations to everybody that they can come along and say what they want and they will be listened to. Those two worlds collide and you'll never get a resolution. Now, some of you, when you responded to me the other day, said, oh, well, this is local government and we should be listening to local people. Well, Grant Robertson could argue, well, I should be listening to the entire country, since it affects everybody, what I'm doing as a central government vote. I know we're compelled under the law to have to go out and consult. I understand that, and therefore we should. But I have to say, creating expectations that we'll do it an elaborate process and everything that people say will be listened to and incorporated in the final budget will create very angry public, because it cannot be incorporated or you'll never bring a budget together. And I ask you to think again. In fact, those of you who are aligned to a Labour Party, please have a chat to Grant Robertson and ask him how he would ever think about preparing a budget with such incredible contestable pressures the whole time about dropping this, lifting that, and so on. And then he had to then go and consult. They do not even consult their own caucus, and they don't even consult their own ministers, and that is for all political parties. And so I am very, very concerned about trying to say, let's go and create an enormous consultation process and create expectations that we'll be listening to everything and we will be incorporating them in our decisions.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think a lot has been said, but you do need to understand that this has been quite a controversial matter over a number of years, and the issue of hearings actually came up before the floods and all of the drama that we've seen in Auckland. It came up before Christmas. So in terms of consistency, I just see that these proposed hearings are going to be in addition to the other forms of consultation, and I'd like to think that people can support it. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson, Deputy Mayor Simpson, sorry.
Your Worship, just before I speak, I just would ask Sandra, there's some questions in the sidebar I am keen to know the answers for before I speak again. Can someone please deal with that? So Councillor Sayers has said, can hearings as proposed by Councillor Bartley be conducted via Teams or another online channel? Kenneth?
So through the chair, Councillor, we would need to look into that to ensure that it's feasible.
Okay, and Councillor Bartley, did you want to change your amendment?
Yeah, because I can hear what everybody's saying, that the staff are under pressure. So, yeah, I understand that. So that's why I was looking at what Councillor Dalton was talking about regarding LTP. I just think that how we do it doesn't allow diverse communities to be heard seriously. That's what I think. That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm not trying to encourage more of our, that the demographic that always turns up to our hearings. I'm trying to get it so that diverse communities are heard seriously.
Okay. Your Worship, can you see what's going on in the chat bar? Because Councillor Newman has now said he has indicated he will follow Councillor Bartley's approach.
What I've indicated to Councillor Bartley, and I don't have a speaking slot at the moment, and so this is a bit out of standing order, irregular. But I mean, I support the inclusion of hearing. If it's going to lapse because the mover is going to kick this off to the 10-year plan, then that's. I've said I'll go along with her on it, but there will need to be a hearings resolution addressed as part of our forward consultation on the budgets. That is an expectation that a number of us have. We've tried for some time now to get it. I don't want us to continue to have annual plan and budget rounds without it. It needs to be in addition to what we do with Have Your Say.
Your Worship, while I've got the floor, I will just ask one final question before and that's to Kenneth. Kenneth, can you just reiterate your answer to me? When I asked you, are hearings already included as part of the communications and engagement process?
So hearings are included as a style of the Have Your Say events. So there's not formal procedures, but we have styled or we have cultivated the approach of the Have Your Say events so it's hearing style and people can speak. One of the advantages or benefits of that is that others in the community can hear the different views that others might have. But we also have politicians present at those events to listen and consider those views as well.
So we can vote for the amendment, noting that we already have a hearings process plan in place, albeit more locally. Would that be correct?
Yes, it's a hearing style event. If we're talking about the rigid procedures that we would normally follow in for a hearing, it's based on that in principle.
Right. So my compromise, Your Worship, through you, looking at the amendment, is actually we can leave it as it is because actually we're already doing it. We already have the plan in place. And then I think we look potentially at the LTP, as Councillor Bartley and Councillor Newman has mentioned. Thank you.
Councillor Ferry, you haven't spoken yet, so I'll listen to you, please.
Thank you. I hope it's worth your time. So I think what I'm hearing here in terms of certainly Councillor Bartley's key motivation is around helping to get as many different diverse community groups and individuals as possible into what we hear as the governing body members. And I'm wondering if some of the way forward here and acknowledging what we've just clarified through the Deputy Mayor is for us to work really closely with our local boards around their local Have Your Say events. On acknowledging Councillor Baker's points about his experience on local boards, mine are similar. When we held formal hearings, we got very few people who wanted to participate. I think one year we had one submission. And that was from actually a member of a different local board. Some people might remember that round. But when we held a Have Your Say event for the last local board plan, where we actually got a local Pacifica community group to host it and put it on, we attracted a very different group of people. The shame was that I don't think either of our governing body members were there to hear it, and and that's okay. I'm not going back and criticising that in hindsight, but I think that that's one of the real strengths of those local board-based Have Your Say events is for governing body members to go to those, not just for the award, and that's certainly my intention. So noting the Deputy Mayor's point that we do have hearings as an option in the current process, I wonder if there's some wording to potentially add there about working closely with local boards so that governing body members can attend as many of those local sessions as possible. I don't know if that's helpful. Hopefully it is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just kind of sum up and let Councillor Bartley finish as the person who proposed this. Things I've noticed, first of all, the point of having a workshop about this is to raise things like that at a workshop rather than night before Christmas. There is a lot of staff time involved in changing things at this stage. The Have Your Say events sound like hearings in a local way, and locally hearings. Someone raised select committees as a good example. Select committees are held in Wellington, and they're designed that way so that you don't get down there to have a say, so that they know full well when they discuss things in the far north that they can have a select committee and not hear a thing. Areas, I know that some people don't like me referring to my previous experience in the far north, but they have a lot of diverse, struggling communities there, and in order to hear from them, they use the local boards, which are called wards or something like that there, but they use them to hold a Have Your Say event, which is very like a hearing in each area. And the local councillors to cover that area are required to attend those. That works very well, and it sounds rather like what Kenneth had in mind, actually. And where we tried to have a central one, everyone came, people just did. We never had more than about 5 or 6 councillors who'd bother to go to those. And you'd sit there for hours when you could be doing much better things for the community, like fixing up the infrastructure. So I'm certainly not intending to spend a week of my time listening to people in the town hall, but I will be taking note of what we hear from around the regions, and I will expect councillors to show up to their local Have a Says. That's what the expectation is. So, Councillor Bartley, having heard that, would you like to sum up, and if you are going to amend your thing, make it clear so we'll know what we're going to have a vote on, because we've kind of gone around in a circle now. I'm not even sure what I'm voting on now. Thank you very much, Councillor Bartley. Would you like to sum up, having raised this?
Thank you, Your Worship. I appreciate that. It should have been raised in a workshop. How many times have we said that in governing body meetings? Oh, gosh. I mean, I think the point has definitely been raised and heard that the way we do this doesn't really, and it hasn't meant that diverse communities have been heard and acted on with what they've presented to us. And that the way we hear from our communities does need to change from hearings, but then also when it has changed from hearings to have your says, it hasn't been taken seriously, because with hearings, it's a formal process where there is report back and, you know, they are formally heard by all of us. So that's what I was trying to get to, was where the governing body get to hear directly from the people that will be affected by these changes. Not trying to add extra work, but I understand that that is what this will do. I am being told to pull it, but we've been through this discussion, so I don't know what that would do to pull it, and whether just to let it go for a vote and just change it to add that bit that Angela said of the LTP. Yeah, okay. God. So just, can you add Angela's bit? Hearings be included as part of the communications process, and what did you say, Angela? Like,
for the LTP, what she said.
Form part of the discussion for the long-term plan.
Yeah, okay. Because I think the point's been made, and at least this will enable measures to be taken.
Hearings to be investigated.
For it to actually change.
You want to make a point of order?
No, you can just add hearings to be investigated.
So I'll ask Sandra to read out what we think the motion is, because it's somewhat clouded.
Councillors, the amendment currently says that hearings form part of the communications process of the LTP.
Okay, I don't think that's quite
a
process. Angela, can you just do it, please? Like, add that bit.
That hearings form part of the discussion around communications in the upcoming LTP.
Can we say communications and engagement?
Yes, thank you. Thanks.
Are the proponents of that happy with that wording?
Sorry, it's Sandra here. Could I, sorry, I'm working at a different location. Could you just repeat the wording, please?
So you've got it right up to discussion around communications and engagement process. That's right. Are they happy with that?
Just to make it absolutely clear, what do people understand by hearings? Does this mean we all sit at the town hall, or does it mean that we have hearings in each ward? Or do we wait for council staff to advise us what that means? I mean, hearings in each ward, I don't feel bad about. Sitting for days in the town hall, I feel bad about.
Hearings to be investigated.
Through the chair, we would explore the options and table it.
Thank you, Kenneth. All right, so we've got this as the thing. I'm going to, it's been called for a division, for a starter on this one here. So Sandra will carry out the necessary forms of carrying out the division.
Okay, councillors, please answer clearly, yes or no. Councillor Baker.
Yes.
Councillor Bartley.
Yes.
Councillor Dalton.
Yes.
Councillor Darby.
Yes.
Councillor Ferry.
Yes.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yes.
Councillor Foley.
Yes.
Councillor Henderson.
No.
Councillor Hills.
Yes.
IMSB member Kake.
Yes.
Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Councillor Leone.
Aye.
Councillor Newman.
Absolutely yes.
Councillor Sayers.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Simpson.
For.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
IMSB Chair Taipere.
Aye.
Councillor Turner.
Yes.
Councillor Walker,
Yes.
Councillor Watson,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
No.
Mayor Brown.
Aye.
Is it no?
It's neither. Abstain.
Abstain. Thank you. So that is carried.
Okay.
So now we move back to.
Now can we move
debate.
back to the, do we have a mover and a seconder for the proposed communications engagement plan? I
Yes,
think we did
we
some
do.
time ago.
Yes.
Did we?
Yes, we did.
Who was that?
Oops. Oh, no, we didn't.
I'm happy to move. Andy here.
Seconder.
I will, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. All those in favour of,
Oops, have they got debate on the
Oh.
substantive now, please?
debate, does anyone want to debate that, or we've debated ourselves into the grave? But
Comments?
Staff final comments, Mr. Kenneth, please. Poor fellow.
Oh,
No.
you're on mute, Kenneth.
Sorry, sometimes some might say I make the most sense when I'm on mute. But anyway, just to be clear, we are committed to engaging all Aucklanders from the 28th of February to the 28th of March through a variety of channels, online, telephone, people can write in on paper, and face-to-face through the Have You Say events as an example. We're also targeting specific communities that we need to hear more from to ensure we get a more representative view of the Aucklanders' concerns or aspirations in relation to the issues we're going out to consult on. In addition, we're focusing on Māori engagement, which I won't unpack, but was in the report, and we have the independent survey being conducted, so we have a statistically representative sample of Aucklanders participating in the process to give us complete answers to all the questions so that we can provide you with quality advice as elected members to inform the decision making that you'll progress through to the end of this financial year. Thank you.
Kenneth, are there any final comments from members? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Anyone prepared to say contrary? Carried. Thank you. Right. How's the time? Okay, we'll now move to the substantive part of today's thing, the adoption of consultation material for the annual budget. This has been a tough time for Auckland, not to mention the rest of the North Island, from Northland down to beyond Gisborne. Wara. We have learned a lot, myself included. We have to focus on the safety and welfare of our people first, then focus on those things that are important to our residents and get on with fixing our infrastructure. The consultation document we are adopting today is based on the budget proposal agreed by the governing body in December. We have had to make a few changes given the circumstances we find ourselves in. We have proposed some changes to the annual budget to respond to the recovery efforts required as a result of the storms we have had in the last 2 weeks and what may come in the future. Unfortunately, the time frame for adopting our annual budget cannot change. We have to get this done now and out for consultation. This will give the maximum amount of time for us to get feedback on the proposed budget. We can then debate and discuss the final details of our annual budget and make the right decisions for Auckland. We don't know what all the storm-related costs will be for some time yet, but they will be significant. Staff are working hard to ensure the storm-related repair and recovery activity in this financial year is able to be managed as far as possible within the existing budgets and through accessing the existing Climate Change Response Fund, insurance proceeds, Waka Kotahi and other government funds, as well as any spare capital in our current capital program. I have proposed a new 20 million a year fund for storm response activity starting in 2023-24 annual budget. That is in this consultation document. This will allow operating budget for proactive and reactive responses, meaning we are better prepared for future storm events. We need to do things like more catchment cleaning, street cleaning, overland flow path management, and more stream and culvert maintenance. Then we need to prepare more for helping people if adverse events occur. These are the things we need to prioritise. We do need to deal with the underinvestment in stormwater infrastructure over the years. What I can see is that Council has been spending money on the public stormwater assets but not doing much on the issues on private land. What we now know about stormwater is that it needs a fully functioning network approach which includes private land. We need to focus more on hydraulic capacity. That means being able to deal with more water flows at a bigger scale. This will need more funding for the capital program. It could be more than double what we spend now, and that will be something I want to consider as part of the long-term plan. For now, work should start on how to redirect some CapEx from the proposed annual budget to start the planning and consenting work. We also need to look very hard at where houses are built, especially where intensification is being enabled in areas without adequate stormwater infrastructure. We've known for a long time that climate change was going to raise these issues, and we cannot hide from that reality now. That is likely to come at a cost to Council and central government. Last year, the Council consented 2,358 buildings in hazard zones, including floodplains and flood-prone areas. Not all of these buildings will cause problems. Some may be perfectly sensible, but it is a concerning figure, and we need to investigate it. I'm not convinced that our current plans have adequately grappled with the problem, especially where the Environment Court or government has imposed changes on us. We need to look at that. Regional grants. Staff have done some further work on this since the initial mayoral proposal was adopted in December last year. What they have found is that the real level of regional contestable grants that are available to consider or that could be reduced is nearer to $3 million, not $8 million. The remaining $5 million is already committed for regional activity and was beyond the savings we looked at in December. So we are only looking for $3 million of savings. While the savings target for this proposal has reduced from 130 million to 125 million, this does not mean that there aren't other savings to be found. And I'm challenging management to do that across Council and the CCOs. Every dollar saved could be redirected to higher impact spending like stormwater. We know that Aucklanders want their infrastructure to work. My proposal in these minor but important changes is still the right mix of levers to address our budget palette challenge, which has not gone away. If anything, it will be worse. The budget consultation process provides an opportunity for the public or any other interested parties to give feedback and or raise their concerns about the impact of these proposals. Today is not about revisiting the budget proposal. That has already been agreed with the addition of the Storm Response Fund, the only change. Today is about approving the consultation document itself. We have some tough choices ahead, and the consultation process will inform any final decisions. I'm going to ask Peter, Ross and Tamsis to take us through the report before questions, but before I do that, I will move the recommendations and ask for a seconder. Do I have a seconder for the recommendation?
I will second, Your Worship.
Second that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Peter, Ross and Tamsin. In that order, or what do you?
Thank you, Your Worship. I shall introduce and pass across As councillors know, the proposed budget aims to address an estimated budget shortfall of 295 million while continuing to prioritise services that Aucklanders need and value. It has been produced under immense time pressure and also under the impact of unprecedented events. This is not the long-term plan, and there are indications that the long-term plan will need to take some more medium-term views, but today we are focused on the annual budget. There are some tough choices ahead, and those tough decisions for councillors are no easier given the unprecedented storm events that we have had, but they will be informed by the consultation process. The recent weather events that have hit our region have made dealing with the financial situation an even more significant challenge. They've also demonstrated how important council is and the need for us to be an enduring organisation. I would reiterate that there is no free lunch in any budget. Less costs reduced means more rates, or it means more debt, and debt is really just delayed rates. An absolute stake in the ground is maintaining our commitment to being fully funded depreciation by 2028, and while it seems like a technical accounting aspect, it shows that we're managing with financial prudence over the medium to long term and it becoming a sustainable organisation, or maintaining that strength of a sustainable organisation. You've heard about the need within this next budget to bring forward some asset renewal spending and some reprioritisation due to late indications from the storm response, and also that need to increase our operating budgets by around 20 million next year for the ability to prepare for and respond to future storms in the short term while we go through the long-term plan implications. So with that brief opening, I shall pass across to the team to work through in more detail.
Thank you, Peter, and tēnā koutou katoa, and Mayor, councillors and independent Māori statutory board members. So this procedural report on today's agenda provides an overview of the annual budget process that we have undertaken since late last year, through to the drafting of consultation material and adoption today. It provides detail on the advice that has been provided to date, as well as decisions that were made in December that provided the basis for the drafting of our consultation material. In my report, I note that since decision making in December, several changes have been made, as indicated previously, as a result of further work from staff. This includes a reduction of the total amount of regional contestable grants proposal from 8 million to 3 million, a reduction to the total amount of overall group operating savings from 130 million to 125, and further detail on the implications of the TAU operating reduction proposal. These items were discussed at the workshop on Friday and are highlighted in the recommendations in front of you today, as well as a memo that is attached to my report. As a result of the recent storm events, as Peter just indicated, we have also included commentary on the potential financial implications and options for response to these events within the material. This was also discussed at the workshop on Friday, and a memo was also circulated that is attached to my report as well. During last Friday's workshop, we received feedback from you that focused on the local board funding proposal, as well as the feedback form. As a result, we have made amendments to the material to respond to that feedback, and this is included in the documents for adoption today that were distributed this morning. The documents for adoption include a placeholder for the summary of the Tupuna Authority operational plan, which was subject to decision making earlier in the meeting, local consultation material which was adopted by our 21 local boards last week, and the audited material relating to the potential amendment to our 10-year budget 2021 to 2031 to provide for the potential full or partial sale of our shares in Auckland International Airport. Since Friday's workshop, we have completed the audit process for the consultation material, and the unmodified audit opinion is now included in the consultation document. In the report, I also include detail on the important role the Audit and Risk Committee plays in monitoring and overseeing our risk and control processes relating to the annual budget and any amendments to that 10-year budget. Yesterday, the Audit and Risk Committee met and were provided with an update on the process for the development of the consultation material relating to that amendment, and they also received a confidential briefing from our auditors. I will ask Ross to talk to that once I've finished with this introduction. Finally, the recommendations in front of you today also include a delegation to the Mayor and Chief Financial Officer to make final changes if needed before we proceed with printing and distributing the material to support consultation that begins on the 28th of February, running through to the 28th of March. Kia ora, I'd now like to hand over to Ross.
Thank you. So as Tamsin has mentioned, the part of the consultation document that relates to the airport shares proposal needs to undergo a review by Audit New Zealand. So that review, as Tamsin said, has been completed and a clear audit opinion has been issued. It's now been incorporated, that opinion has been incorporated into the document. We've got Ethel Graham from Audit New Zealand online on the call, who's happy to answer any questions there might be around that opinion. The Audit and Risk Committee yesterday met to review the process around the audit and any key outstanding risks or issues associated with that. They resolved to advise the governing body there were no significant outstanding issues, and so you're all good to adopt this amendment to the LTP today. There was some concern expressed about just the wording of one pop-out box. Concern that if that was read in isolation as opposed to the rest of what was on the page there, some people might have a wrong understanding. We've worked through amendments to that text with the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, and that's been resolved and updated in the document. So that's and that is included in the documents that are ready for adoption, along with the final audit opinion. So the process is completed, and you're all good to adopt that amendment alongside the annual budget. We're happy to take any questions around the budget documents or the process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I do have questions from Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, Your Worship. In the material that we're looking at, the only thing that has really changed for me, and as a direct result of the crisis we've been through, is the importance of our citizens' advice bureaus. And I wondered whether there is any information you can provide on changes for the funding of citizens' advice bureaus.
For a response from management to that.
At the moment, there's no change to the advice. The proposal is to go out for consultation. There is ample room for the Citizens Advice Bureau and any other member of the public to provide feedback on that, and that's stuff that can be considered when you make final decisions in May, June.
Okay, did you hear that?
I heard that. I don't like that. I think we need them at the moment, and we need them on our side.
Well, I'm open-minded about that, but I'm reasonably sure that there will be strong consultation on that. Councillor Ferry.
Kia ora, thank you. I have two questions. First is a follow-up actually to Councillor Fletcher's point regarding the CAB. Can we ensure, please, that they are included in the stakeholder consultation process? And the other question is regarding the questions on page 94. And I'd like to foreshadow here that I'll be putting forward an amendment to two of the questions there. But in the first instance, I wanted to get some advice from staff as to the questions that start. So they're on the second half of the page and they're in that optional demographic information. Do you pay rates to Auckland Council, and what is your yearly household income before tax? I'd like to understand the purpose of these two questions. How are they supposed to inform our decision making? Are we supposed to take feedback from people on higher incomes, less or more importantly, and on the basis of whether or not people think they pay rates. And is there any particular advice around whether the rates, do you pay rates question is actually going to be answered well? Because I think a lot of people may feel that they do pay rates indirectly through rent or through other means. So if we just get some advice from staff around those two questions in particular, and how they sort of will fit into informing good decision making by us when we consider what we've heard through consultation. Thank you. And just foreshadowing, I have an amendment on both of those, which is already with Sandra. Thank you.
She should give you.
Kia ora, Councillor. This is Anton Griffith, the Auckland Insights Manager, if I can speak through the chair to that point. In terms of what we can use that information for, certainly I wouldn't place more emphasis on one particular income group, but it does give you the ability to be able to look at the results and say, have we received a broad feedback from a broad swath of the community, or is this group that have submitted predominantly from higher income groups or from middle income groups and missing out lower income groups? It would also give us the ability to compare on that aspect with the independent survey, which does collect that information. So we would be able to sort of use those two bits of feedback from the public and say, interpret them with in mind how that reflects our broader community. In terms of how well that will be understood, we have endeavoured to make it very clear in that question that if you are a renter only, you are not a ratepayer. We did take that question through cognitive testing. So that's putting it to real members of the public and interviewing them about how they understood it. And we believe that we have got it as good as we can get it without someone verbally explaining. But it is possible that someone may misinterpret it. And I think in terms of why it was added, I think that this is something we've worked on and explored with the Mayor's office, but it does give you that ability to see which parts of the community have submitted through the statutory process.
Thank you for those answers. Mr. Mayor, would you like to do the amendment now, or shall we wait until we get to the debate? I'm happy to take your lead on that. Indeed, you need to.
I'm advised by Sandra that procedurally we should wait and get the discussions on the whole document, and then you can propose your amendment later on, if that's all right.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. And I reserve the right to speak to it at that time. Thank you.
That's good. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, have staff taken on board the concerns raised by the Aotea Great Barrier Local Board and the Waiheke Local Board about the inequity of the cuts and how those cuts affect the island communities?
Not yet.
So in terms of thinking about equity of local board funding, that's a matter that needs to be resolved through the local board funding policy, which is that's outside the scope of this annual budget. It is in the scope of the board, and that can be looked at through the LTP. In terms of the feedback, in terms of representing, the 16 million cut, there was concern expressed that the finance was to plain it, so we've updated the content in the LTP to acknowledge the impacts and clearer about that. So we've updated around the budget, issues around board funding equity will, be resolved.
And may I add, Mr. Mayor, may I add a comment, Mr. Mayor? May I add a comment, please?
There is nothing but static for me.
Now the further inequities of the islands. Can't hear you, Councillor Lee.
I have turned my mic off to ensure that there's clarity for other speakers. Ross's answer wasn't particularly legible, but I want to make another point here, and that is I want to lodge a strong protest at the failure of management to provide the councillors, at least the members of the Expenditure Control Committee, with spreadsheets of OPEX and CAPEX to enable us to make a decision as we're required to under Section 76 and 77 of the Local Government Act. I want to make that point very, very strongly. Months have gone by and management have stubbornly refused to disclose that information.
Thank you. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Mayor. Appreciate that. Just going to, I've got two areas I want to explore. Just focus me on the airport consultation. In the first instance, can I go to page 88, bottom left-hand side, where we discuss the interest saving sensitivity? On that, can I ask staff, are the staff confident that that particular very small section, and that relates to interest saving sensitivity related to share price growth or the share price going backwards possibly, are staff confident that that is clear to the reader, that it's transparent, that it conveys the history of growth in the share price, and just in the last 2 months where our shareholding has gone from 1.9, which is mentioned in the papers, to something like 2.26 billion. So that's an increase of 320 million, I think, approximately. Are staff confident that we are being very clear about that? I'm struggling to read that clarity. And the second part to that, Mayor, is we still mention the value of our 1809% as of last June at 1.9, where it's currently, and we have this information because you can just check the share price, at well over 2 billion at 2.2 and something. Can staff just respond to me, please, Mayor?
Yep, happy to. So we've looked at this extensively and to see whether we're being clear enough with the information as well disclosed. All of these things, have to have a point in time estimate, and then we've made some assumptions at points in time. It was when, for the share price, it was when we provided the advice through to the governing body. So we've disclosed when that share price was set, the sensitivity around it, and what are the impacts if interest rates, share price, and other things move. That's been a key focus of the audit process. The Audit New Zealand Office of the General have carefully considered, have we been clear enough? Are we disclosing those risks and sensitivities well? And the final outcome of that review is yes, this is appropriate and fit for consultation. So we're very confident we've been through a robust process, and those things are as clear as they need to be. There is further information, including the share price chart of the history and the supporting information. So there's this, combined with what's here in the support information, provides ample disclosure and clarity for the public.
Okay, just to follow up on that, Mayor, so there's no room to update those numbers to what that our holding in that company is as of end of January, for example. There's no room to do that because it just seems hardly relevant, the price of the shareholding and the situation as of what was it, end of June last year. Is there no room to update? Should we not do that, Ross?
Not at this point. We've completed the audit process. The audit opinion has been issued already. If we looked at update it in January, then it'll be different in February. It'll be different again when we get to consultation. The share price moves on a daily basis. Could go up, could go down. So what's important here is we carefully disclose what assumptions we've made, what are the risks and sensitivities, and the viewers, we've done that adequately. So too late to make sort of adjustments at this point in the process, and things will continue to change.
Okay, thanks, Ross. Thanks, Mayor. Mayor, I'll come back with a second question around the stormwater after others. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turner?
No, did I have my hand up? I'm sorry.
Question yet. Councillor Darby. No, you've just done, Councillor Darby.
Yeah, he's got another question.
Oh, you got another question, Councillor Darby. We'll do the stormwater one now.
Okay, coming to the stormwater one, I'll just grab my notes here. How is this proposed budget informed by any data from the flood event, including identification of, the areas where we may have debris or caused damage, related to loss of life, injury, loss of property, etc. I'm just very conscious that, yes, there is a need for infrastructure, but we can't lose sight of our underinvestment in being proactive. And Mayor, you actually talked about, we need to address where houses are built, and we need to look at hazard zones, which is something I mentioned at last week's planning committee meeting. But of course, I can't see anywhere in this budget allocation any money going to the planning or regulatory areas to address those two matters that you addressed, Mayor. So I'm in the first instance, can I hear from Chief of Strategy on how the development of this $20 million spend is informed by the planning lens and the regulatory lens? Can I hear from the Chief of Strategy in the first instance, please?
Through the chair, kia ora koutou. I think this is just a very recent development, obviously, that has been proposed by the Mayor, Councillor Darby, and so I believe there'll be a next step over the next couple of months to perhaps help identify what this money could be used for, and whether it is in pure infrastructure terms, or whether it is more also around the resilience around planning and regulatory work that as you and the Mayor have referenced already today. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Megan. Mayor, I'm just wondering whether this can be worded in such a way that it does encompass other areas and not just hard infrastructure. I'm assuming it includes soft infrastructure as well. But we passed a motion, I think it was unanimous last week at Planning Committee, and that asked our staff to go away and look at the land use implications, etc., and investigate the regional and localised impacts of the flooding, implications for land use planning, regulatory plan changes, infrastructure, and other policy settings. So I'm just wondering how we can word what the $20 million is going to be applied to in a way that allows the eventual allocations to be informed by that work. At the moment, I think it's restricted. So is there a way to word this so that it can reflect on the work that we've given some urgency to at the planning committee last week? Who could fetch that? Is that for you, Megan, or somebody else?
No, I think that's for Ross to respond to, and trying to get exact numbers at a time like this is, of course, difficult. There's only a certain amount of money that can be spent in certain times as well. Some of it is for immediate and obvious repairs. Some of the planning stuff, there's a capability within Megan's staff to do a lot of the planning stuff anyhow. But I'll get Ross to run through his version of it, but that's my understanding of it. And also it's a statement that we're serious.
Yes, as the Mayor said, it's very early days yet to understand the full financial impact. So that's why on page 2 in a large box, we've kind of got the storm event box that says it's too early to calculate the specific financial impacts. And so we're focused on identifying key things that might change. So all we can do in the consultation document at the moment is signal that change will happen. In terms of the proposed 20 million of additional OPEX, we have kept that very general. We've said that the primary focus is about building our capability to prepare for and respond to future storm events. It gives some examples of what it might be spent on, but it's worded in a way that is very general. It isn't definitive about what are the specific things. So we think there is ample scope of what that money could be used for. The reality is it's going to take time to work through that, and we'll have to do some further work on that, have further discussions and decision making, and that will be as part of a final annual budget. So there is ample scope to accommodate all the things that you're talking about in due course, but it's too early to be definitive on that right now.
I think Councillor Darby, this will be informed by lots of work, including the planning process. Plus, there is, I'm involved in quite a lot of central government negotiations. We're not quite sure how much we're going to get from them towards us as well. So it was a sum that seemed reasonable enough to make good start on the work and inform us for a fair while until the picture becomes clearer. I think there's a national picture which is going to inform this as well at the moment. So we're happy with that as being a sufficiently large sum to certainly make a dent in things.
Okay, look, thanks, Mayor. Look, I know the intent, and I totally support you with the intent, and it's necessary. And if I could just suggest that as you use your authority to edit the document possibly along with the Deputy Mayor, maybe we just make sure those words leave open the opportunity of the funding being allocated to the very things that the investigation reveals. Thank you.
And lastly, of course, we will have more information on this by the time we actually set the budget after the consultation. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, 2 questions. Mine's very similar to Councillor Darby's, but I was going to ask for clarification from staff on when we'd be looking at work programs for that storm response fund, which I fully support, by the way. And, if we can, what committee that will come through.
I think the governing body.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. As you know, it's very difficult to understand how long this piece of string is, and we were well on train to understand the impacts from 27 January at the high level until Cyclone Gabrielle turned up, unfortunately, and has created an overlay on top of that. I don't want to commit to a time frame that I can't meet. We're all working at pace. Initially on the response. The response has to be the focus. There's no point the financial accountants, such as myself, getting stuck in demanding answers on cost lines at this point. But we are pulling that together, and I do think we will have information at the end of consultation which will help us guide our path forward. I expect, given the various roles of the committees, that it's likely to come to governing body in the first instance, and as a high level financial impact.
Well, thank you. I've got another question. Tātaki Auckland Unlimited, I just note under C there, a material reduction in TAU's visitor attraction activities. Do we have any more information that you can share with us today on that?
So there's information in the memo that's been distributed. There's more information in the consultation document and the supporting information. There is a section there, a couple of pages on that, and we've got Justine, the CFO from TAU online, I believe. Might be able to answer any specific questions.
Issues.
Justine, did you want to comment?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much for the question. Essentially the extra reduction of 27.5 million on top of the 17 that was already built into the budget will mean a total reduction of 44 million. That will mean substantially looking at the subsidised access provided to community facilities and regional facilities that are currently free to the public. So we'll be having to look at pricing models to go with those. There will also be very little to no budget available to attract major events for Tamaki Makaurau from 2024 onwards. So that will have impact in terms of international visitor attractions, business events and international student programs. Additionally, the expectation is that we will have very little or no economic development activity available unless we can find alternative funding streams.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have no more questions up at the moment, so Councillor Ferry, would you like to come forward with your amendment, please?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the amendment is very straightforward, just to seek the removal of the two questions that I highlighted to members before. Removal of the one that begins, do you pay rates, and the one, what is your yearly household income before tax? And just to speak to that amendment briefly, I think that these two questions are not questions that we have asked in the past, and I think there was a good reason for that. I don't see that they bring any value to our consideration, and indeed they could skew our perceptions of some of the feedback that we receive. We should be treating all submitters, regardless of whether they pay rates or not, or what type of rates they pay, as legitimate, and not weight some more than others. And the same with sources of income, levels of household income. So I'm very dubious about the value of these two questions, and put forward this amendment, hopefully for your support, to remove them from the consultation document at this point. Thank you very much.
Okay, Shane Henderson is a seconder. Would you like to speak to this, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree completely with what Councillor Ferry has said. When we're asking any questions on a consultation document, we need to be able to clearly justify them. We want to, ask as less as possible as we can, so that we're getting that really quality information back. But also, we're not creating barriers for communities to participate. I'm concerned that when they read that question, there'll be people out there that are concerned, that don't want to share that kind of information, and will throw the whole thing away. The flip side to that is we need to justify why we're asking these things. And we did ask earlier today, and I do appreciate the answer from staff, but personally, I feel that that is not sufficient to include these questions in there. When you look at it, you're not going to be using either of these questions to weight the submissions that you get back. You're not going to read them in light of the answers to these questions, and just taking them in turn. Paying rates to Auckland Council, everyone pays rates. Some people pay them directly, some people pay them indirectly. And then adding to that is that the majority of our income is non-rate revenue, of which, that's non-discriminatory. Everyone pays their tickets to buses and pools and all that kind of stuff. So yes, we all fund the council. We just do it in different ways. Secondly, the yearly household income. I do think that is personal information for people that people particularly find uncomfortable to talk about. And the flip side is, as I've just said, their yearly income is not going to affect the validity of their submission at all. And so on that basis, I think we should be deleting both of these guys and just going with a clearer ask for the public, so we can get as many submissions as possible. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Simpson, please.
Your Worship, I have a question on the amendment just before I form my view. Staff, can anyone tell me, do we have any evidence or otherwise that landlords have been passing on any rent rises through to any rates rises through to renters or not? Is that anecdotal, or do we have any evidence one way or the other?
Tenancy Tribunal allow that as a contributing piece of information. But
so
Andrew?
All the economics suggests, and all the economics and all the evidence suggests that land prices and house prices are not affected by land taxes, including rates. They're a very small proportion of the value of property, about 0.0017% for the general rate. And rents are driven by supply and demand, not by underlying costs at present. As we can see in the market's response to higher interest rates, there's a higher cost, but prices have come down.
Thank you.
Councillor Newman, are you there?
Yeah, look, I mean, Your Worship, I'm not going to support the amendment. I'm happy with the question. I mean, ultimately, the feedback from Aucklanders forms part of my judgment, but my constituents elect me to exercise my good judgment, not act solely on the basis of a quantitative survey. I'm a landlord. I don't pass on the rate increase. I don't get my tenants to pay the rates at all, because ultimately I treat the rates as a cost of the property and claim it back through my tax return. Yes, some landlords may pass on that cost and some clearly don't. But I think that there's nothing in this question that necessarily precludes people who are not property owners from participating in these surveys. It is a question that exists. Some people will answer it, some people won't. It's just not a material enough issue from my perspective, although I do appreciate that some people feel differently. I just think that this particular survey needs to be informed by the advice that's been received to date. People wanted a quantitative survey. Part of the consideration for a quantitative survey, I would have thought, would be to understand precisely broadly understand the circumstances of the people who are contributing their answers to that survey, to ensure that you get a good snapshot of Aucklanders who are contributing their feedback.
Deputy Mayor, you're back up again.
No, Your Worship, I just had that question, that's all.
Okay, my apologies. It must have been something with the computer here. Councillor Hills, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be supporting both amendments. I think they are irrelevant to the information we need. I do worry, the feedback I get often with both voting for local government and participating in these, that you have to be a ratepayer. So even though these questions are optional, I think they do lead people to potentially switch off or not think that this survey is from them. Like Councillor Henderson said, the majority of our income is not from rates, so we need to consider a broader way of asking how people pay. On the quantitative survey, we're still doing the Kantar survey, and that's completely anonymous. I do know that if this is reported back, the spreadsheets, I assume or I hope, would remove this, but it still means the council system has that sort of information on people, whereas a Kantar survey is completely separated and doesn't come back to us with names and that sort of information. So I just think that it's not helpful, and I don't think is that inclusive, those questions. I think they shouldn't be on there. But yeah, thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. If these questions are aimed at acquiring data that's useful, then I can see some information here that may be useful
to us in analysing, who is taking part in these feedback forms. And I take it in the first instance, if people don't want to answer those questions, they don't answer them. There's no little red asterisk that doesn't allow you to proceed to the next question if you don't answer one. So I'm assuming that's the case. It may even be worthwhile to make it clear that people don't have to answer questions, and that may be in the form as well. As far as the data that may or may not come from it, I think it is useful to know these two elements, but particularly if, as councillor is saying, there already is a view that this is a survey or concerns for ratepayers only. I think people that are renting, which is a huge part of our population now, unfortunately, in terms of the declining home ownership rates, then if that perception exists, then we should be doing our level best to actually remove that view insofar as it may exist, because that's not helpful. And I'm assuming this sort of data in terms of collating the status of people, both in terms of their income and in their rating, ratepayer status, is actually useful. If, for instance, it came in that there's entirely disproportionate number of people who are ratepayers responding to council survey as opposed to people who aren't, then we have got an issue, because people do pay for their rates whether they rent or not, because I'm sure landlords, or enough landlords, will incorporate the rate component or increases when they do their rent reviews. Certainly, when I listen to landlords talk, they talk about the rising cost of living, and council rates is always something that gets chucked in there. So that is providing useful information in my view. If people do object to it, and I could see circumstances where people may say, well, what I earn is none of your business, then as long as it's clear they don't have to reply to that, then fair enough. But if it helps inform that profile of who's involved in this, I see that being helpful, and helpful for the very reasons that some of the people are objecting to this. Thank you.
Mike Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a couple of issues that have been raised here. They relate to privacy of citizens, and also there's an aspect of equity or equality. And I understand the mover and seconder's concerns about discriminating technically between ratepayers and people who can only be renters. And the fact of the matter is, whether they pay rates directly, the rental dwelling would not work unless the renter paid enough money to the landlord for the landlord to pay the rates on it. So if we look at our own community groups, we can take a lead. In the past, some years ago, quite a long time ago, local community groups were called Ratepayers Association. The community has dispensed with that name just about right across the region and across the country to residents. And I think if there are concerns here on privacy and equity, I think we should take those concerns on board. When it comes to asking people about their income, refer to my earlier comments about the refusal of council management to allow us to have a look at OPEX and indeed the income of our senior managers. So, I think we need to think about this. I can understand, it's not a big issue for me, but I can understand the concerns of the people who want this amendment.
Okay, that's what I've got. I'll just sum up a little bit. I'm neutral about this. I thought the point was to ensure that we had a good cross-section of people. Similarly for ages, I mean, some of us don't really want to have our age known either, but the point we do that is so we don't find that only young people or only old people fill out the form. We don't want to find that only wealthy people or only poor people fill out the form. I didn't think it was for any other reason, but if it upsets people, we just want them to come back, I think. I'm not fussed about, I don't know why we want to know whether a person is neither female nor male, what we learned from that either, but I thought this was just so that our people could ensure that we had a good cross-section of everybody. I don't expect that we're going to be publishing anybody's income, and it's optional. I don't think I'll declare my age actually in case I get discriminated against, and I'm not quite sure of my gender. I used to think I knew that, but so I'm very neutral on this. I'm quite happy to just put the thing. Actually, I think we've been. I just be careful what you wish for, though. If we find that we've only got wealthy Pākehās responding to this, you won't know that. I'm prepared to put it. I think it should go to a.
You can go to division if you want, or just put it.
So I'll put it and see whether we get it, but it sounds like a division thing to me because I've had people before and against it talking, so probably best to do.
I'll call a division, Your Worship. It's Councillor Newman.
Yeah, that's good. Right, I'm going to ask Sandra to go through this, please. Just call out. We're going to say you're either yes, you're in favour of the proposal, or no, you're not. Or you can abstain if you don't care.
Councillors, you're voting on Councillor Ferry's amendment. Councillor Baker.
No.
Councillor Bartley.
Yeah.
Councillor Dalton.
For.
Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Ferry.
For.
Councillor Fletcher.
No.
Councillor Foley.
For.
Councillor Henderson.
For.
Councillor Hills.
Aye. Thank you.
IMSB member Kake.
For.
Councillor Lee.
Aye.
Councillor Leone.
For.
Councillor Newman.
Against.
Councillor Sayers.
Against.
Deputy Mayor Simpson.
Against, but I'm against for I, Roman numeral I, but number 2, I'm ambivalent. I'll abstain on that.
Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Against.
IMSB Chair Taipiri.
For.
Councillor Turner.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
No.
Councillor Watson.
Against.
Councillor Williamson.
Against.
Mayor Brown.
I'll abstain. I don't care.
So that is carried 11 votes to 10 with 1 abstention. So we now go back to the substantive for debate.
Right, we're going back to the substantive issue, which was passing the entire shooting box. Is there any further debate on this? We have debated it already.
Councillor Newman. Councillor Newman.
Councillor Newman.
Well, briefly, Your Worship, it's very important that the budget goes out for consultation, but I just want to signal that there will need to be further negotiation in relation to the scope of the OPEX savings and precisely where they come from. I'm also very concerned to ensure that the budget for stormwater, which you've indicated, which I strongly support, needs to be a governing body budget decision in the first instance, because ultimately I see this matter as being one of a step change around CapEx, but more importantly, a budget for renewal of infrastructure, as well as the consequential OPEX cost for the renewal of that infrastructure, which ultimately needs to be funded through rates. And that's not really a planning decision, actually. That has to be a budget decision. So when we get more information around this needs to be informed by where those budget bids have come from Healthy Waters over the last few years, both those lines that got above the line from the ELT as well as those that fell below the line, because it's quite clear that there have been significant issues with respect to stormwater maintenance. But also, Your Worship, I just want to signal my very strong view that as well as the consequential OPEX savings are going to need to be found, and I don't want them to just be found through regional grants. I think that those people who are on the highest salaries in the organisation need to be part of the OPEX savings, and the Chief Executive is going to have to reflect on that, because it's essential to sustaining support from my constituents to ensure that all parts of this council are part of the savings. But also the CapEx reprioritisation, which will need to be addressed through the long-term plan, a very significant chunk of which comes from Auckland Transport. And I just need to signal, Your Worship, my expectation that the Board of Auckland Transport is not going to need to get right in behind and cooperate with the savings that we will require, because a lot of the savings that we will require are going to require people to give up what they consider to be incredibly important in the AT CapEx space in order to fund some of this very important renewal work which needs to be happening, the majority of which needs to be happening in the road corridors, not exclusively, but a lot of it has to happen in the road corridors, because that's where the stormwater infrastructure is. And finally, Your Worship, with respect to the airport shares, I most certainly be putting my hand up for that matter to go out for consideration, because ultimately I in my own life wouldn't be buying shares in Auckland Airport because they don't return a dividend. And if I'm not prepared to do that in my own private life, then I have to reflect very carefully on whether I ask my constituents to continue to pay the interest costs in order to hold these shares which are not paying a dividend. And in the years when they have paid a dividend, I point out that the dividend has been taken as opposed to being taken in the form of share offers, which is one of the reasons why our share portfolio has been declining over time. So thank you, Your Worship, for putting up the draft budget. It's very difficult, but I do want to support this budget going out for more consultation. And I do want to put the Chief Executive and the Chief Financial Officer on notice. My expectation for sustaining support for this budget is we will need to have a further negotiation over precisely where some of these OPEX savings will come this year, as well as foreshadowing the CapEx savings that will need to come as part of the long-term plan debate, which we had shortly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Walker, please.
Sure. I'd like to agree with all of the statements that Daniel Newman just made. My support for the budget and what we go out for is very conditional on councillors receiving information at a much more granular level across both the organisation, that's Auckland Council, and the council organisations. I would suggest in this budget there will be many Aucklanders wanting to see what the line-by-line expenditures are across renewals, across transport, across stormwater, and they won't be able to find them because they don't have access to them, and neither do we. So if ever there was a time for us to be much more transparent around the provision of information, especially for councillors who need to make the hard calls, then that is now. And I agree with the comments that Councillor Newman made around oversight, around the expenditure we've got on salaries and the like. Yes, I think it's great to have the 20 million around stormwater response, but let's have more oversight on what we're actually spending across the council group and the council controlled organisations on that, and any number of areas where we need to find savings, and we need to find them soon. And in that respect, I know that my fellow councillor, Morris Williamson has been seeking the same information and thus far has not received it. That's my understanding. If Mr. Williamson might want to confirm that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of brief points for me. So thank you to the staff. I want to just acknowledge the finance staff that have worked so hard on this. You know, in the previous term as Deputy Chair of the Finance Committee, I saw firsthand just how hard they worked on a normal budget, not that we had many of those. But with the storm compounding everything, you guys have had to pull in some extremely long hours. So we all really appreciate your work on this. I just want to be very clear that this vote is not a vote to approve the budget itself in terms of its content. It's to improve the consultation document going out to the residents so that they can have their say, and the democratic mandate that we have passes to them, in my view. And I actually want to really commend the questions in this budget that give that flexibility, that allow people to share whether they think service levels are too high or too low, whether our revenue is too high or too low, in a way that maybe we haven't done before, with a level of detail and a level of flexibility that we haven't had. So I'm actually really excited for the consultation period and getting out into those communities and talking to them about the budget. But, you know, my phone has been rung off the hook about this since December. And as I've said before, the Waitakere community is incredibly passionate and incredibly concerned about the public services and the operating savings that are proposed in this budget. I won't need to talk about that too much because that's for another day. But I commend the questions that we're asking, and I'm also glad to see the Storm Response Fund put in there. I think that's a really good move. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, everybody.
Councillor Turner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to everyone who's done this work. I do support Daniel Newman's comments. He says them more eloquently than me. The public want change, and we keep hearing about underinvestment. There's not underinvestment. Money's not getting to the right places, and I don't think that these questions and these abilities to respond to really cover that properly. Although I'm really only just stating that for the record, because you know we've got to move forward with something. But we have got, we have got huge under-delivery by this organisation, and you know it's not as though we're up to a line in the sand or something. That line just got washed away by the last storm, and the people, the evidence of underinvestment in these areas or under getting the money, the correct money to the ground is just evident to everybody. So I really think that there is significant change to be made here, and the people you know see it around the budget. We need to show it through the budget. So yeah, I'll support this going forward. It does worry me though about, I've been in these situations before on the local board where all of a sudden we're told, well, that submission and that submission are out of scope, so we won't take any notice of those. And I think that's my concern. Just what I'm trying to raise here is that because we haven't been given the data, you know, I just can't get over those figures of 229 million other expenditure, operating expenditure, 1.944 billion for the group, and you know the contracts, the full facility contracts, they're almost invisible to us, and these are the places where the public can see the poor outcomes. And we can't see where our money's being spent in there. And I believe there's huge savings and things that could be done inside there. So, yeah, I'm just stating right now that when we come to this debate, I will be coming to it with other ideas, and I think things will have changed by the time we get there too. Thank you.
Councillor Watson, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be supporting the budget going out for consultation, and certainly commend your lead in putting something together in these very difficult and changing times. Unprecedented seems to be a word that we've heard a lot of in the last 3 years, but things just keep rolling along. And in that respect, in terms of going out to consult and then eventually make decisions, the robustness of the consultation and the rigor of the decision then is often only as good as the information that informs. We are putting information out to the public, and I'm hopeful that a good proportion of them will at least read the summary documents or try and educate themselves further in terms of any points they should or shouldn't be making. In terms of the information that comes to us, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, I must echo the sentiments of some of my colleagues here in terms of the continued failure, it would seem, to provide all the financial information that has been requested for the Finance and Expenditure Committee. That is concerning, Mr. Mayor. I note or compare the approach taken by the Rodney District Council, which wasn't a council known for its openness and transparency, but in come budget times, there was a breakdown, line by line breakdown of all manner of cost centres within that council organisation. So that's being requested, has been requested on numerous times now by numerous individuals, numerous councillors. So that's certainly going to be an important condition of any decision I make or don't make based on the availability of that information in the first instance to the committee, and then secondly to the councillors as a whole. In that respect, I'd contrast, some of the, rather predictable nickel and diming on deeply unpopular and important parts of council's operations, closing libraries for one day, or cuts to CAB or environmental grants where volunteers are clearing streams and whatnot. We seem to have got down to quite some detail very quickly on that, as opposed to some of the big cost centres within council, which we have very little insight or transparency over. So I'm trusting that will be addressed. Time's ticking on that one. We've been asking since November. We're going out for consultation and we still haven't got it. Finally, Mr. Mayor, as far as the airport shares go, I certainly will be endeavouring to keep an open mind on that, and will be informed by what members of the public say, and certainly I think in the debate that follows, depending on what that feedback is, there will have to be some analysis of conditions that we just don't result in the same situation we had when we disposed of the $330 million rainy day fund, the diversified assets fund, which just disappeared into the debt ether, and within a very short space of time the debt was back up and any gains in paying down debt was lost. So that's a discussion for another day. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for getting it to this stage, along with everyone who's been involved, and I'll certainly be taking keen interest in what people are saying. Thank you.
Councillor Ferry. Thank you very much, Councillor Watson.
Oh, kia ora, thank you. Just to very briefly say, I will be voting this through as the consultation document. Thank you to my colleagues for supporting the amendment. And I did just want to commend the staff. I know the timeframes on this were really tight, and at the same time we were responding to major civil emergency across the region, and I know a lot of staff were volunteering extra time to do things like be out at shelters and stuff while this was all going on in the background. I want to also acknowledge my councillor colleagues who have been in the same boat out there in evacuation centres and feeding information in through to log issues at the same time as we grappled with this. And so just wanted to speak to acknowledge that and say that what happens next in terms of the what we're told by our community from this process, I'm anticipating some quite significant changes to what we finally vote on as a result of what we hear from our community. So thank you for the opportunity. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Lotu Fuli.
Kia ora, thank you, Mayor. Like others, I understand that this vote is not about the budget and the content of the budget, but about getting this document out for consultation. And so I will be voting for it. And like everybody else, I want to lend my voice as well to commend the team and commend all of our council staff for getting it through in these tight timeframes and in these very unprecedented times as well. I do want to particularly thank our finance team who were able to turn over and make a change after our Audit and Risk Committee meeting, which was only yesterday. And I thank the team for working overnight with the chair of that committee, with Bruce, and putting that change through. And although it's not perfect, it is at least better than what it was. And so I'm grateful and thankful for that. I'm mindful, like everybody else, on many items there, especially on the cuts that we're asking from our communities and from our local boards in particular, especially as we've been on the ground and seen just how important our community groups and our local boards are when responding to these sorts of unprecedented times. And we know that with climate change, we're going to see much, much more of this. And this is probably our new normal going forward. So funding to communities are absolutely core to what we do as local government. So I'll be waiting keenly to see what our community tells us, and I'll be keeping an open mind until that consultation is concluded. But I thank you, Your Worship, for your leadership in this space as well, and I will be supporting this. Kia ora.
Fully, Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, this is just approving the questions. I'm keeping an open mind as well. There's clearly a budget hole to address, but do want to just point out that some of the debt and other things that get criticised were our choice. In the last 6 years, we increased our capital over 10 years from 18 billion to 32 billion. We chose to almost double our capital expenditure because of the issues we're facing right now. I think water infrastructure went from 5.5 billion in the 2015 budget to 11.1 billion in the 2021 budget, and transport almost doubled as well in that time. So we made a choice the last 6 years to dramatically increase borrowing and spending in those areas that the city has been demanding we do for decades. And clearly what the last few weeks has shown us is that we're still far behind, but we were starting to get on top of it, and there's good examples of that. The other issues are that, we all, and I hope we all, will listen to our communities, but also we're going to have to work together as a team if we want changes here. That, in my opinion, the cuts are dramatic. I feel the stress on top of our communities will be hard, but we need to stump up with, is that more rates? Is that more debt? Are we going to sell the airport shares or not? We cannot just piecemeal vote this through. So we're going to have to do our best, and I will be doing my best to focus on my own actions, to explain to the community what is the other option. It's all right for me to say these cuts are horrible, but I'm going to have to prove to my community that more rates, more debt, or sales of things are the way to go to prevent those cuts. So there will be a lot of conversations, no doubt, but it's about being responsible together. Like we did through COVID when we worked together unanimously on really tough stuff, we are going to have to try move forward together to change this budget or accept this budget, whatever the community tells us. There are things, sweeping statements around procurement. I wasn't on the procurement committee last term, but the details that are given, and I've read all the agendas, are quite significant. The chair and the members there got information every time, line by line, on all the information in those contracts, what are the status quo was, what you're getting out of them, how the savings can get there. Councillor Simpson and others through the Value for Money Committee did work to try and reduce many of those contracts. I think of insurance and IT and different things. So there is a lot of work going on. There are things that clearly we need more information on, but it's not, the transparency has been there on a lot of issues that kind of get thrown out of there. Tātaki Auckland Limited, I think just leaving that quite significant change out there in the open is significant. who will take up that mantle in such a short time for our city when we need an economic recovery, we need arts, culture, events, we need those types of things to keep our community happy, improve their well-being, and through many of the contracts that are in there. So we were going to have to quickly look at how we're going to do that. When the Super City started 12 years ago, we had 10 million, I think, for major events a year, and this will take us down to nothing. So, you know, we need to keep in mind that we have always done these things and community may miss them when they're gone. So there's a long list of things I could talk about. We need to strengthen those, but we do need to show where the money's coming from if we don't want to. And I'm willing to do that, and I hope you all are too. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Darby, please.
Thank you. I'll just focus on two areas. As I mentioned before, I have concern about the wording around the stormwater 20 million. And look, if there's scope, Mayor, working with the Chief of Strategy and others to refine that just so that it can reflect the investigations that we're kicking off through Planning Committee last week, and making sure that communities of greatest need and areas of greatest need receive that funding. And look, just at a rough, I think we probably need to look at that 20 million and how it's allocated, and maybe there's a 2.5 into the plans and places team, water strategy implementation, looking at retreats, strengthening development rules. We just have to look at that. So at the moment, that's not highlighted. Increased budget provision for emergency management activities, for example. We know that needs a big leg up. Catchment management planning. My understanding is that we stopped doing catchment management planning quite a few years ago. So, you know, do we need to invest in that area as well? As you want to do, Mayor, increased maintenance, yeah, that's all good, but focusing on where there's greatest risk of loss of life, of injury, damage to property, etc. Focusing on nature-based solutions, not losing sight of that. Stream daylighting, soft infrastructure, flood detention. We've done some good things in that area, but we need to accelerate in that area. So I would probably like to see the wording of this be reviewed, and Mayor and others, you've got delegated authority to do this, and then we can adjust those buckets that I've just mentioned, rather than putting it all into one bucket. The other area, Mayor, I just want to dwell on a little bit is, and I have real concern about this, and that is the requirement of Auckland Transport to make savings of $21 million, and really, I just the impact in the public transport area there worries me immensely. Yes, COVID has hit patronage. The bus driver shortage has hit patronage, and so too is the shortage of skippers and deckhands on ferries. Most impacted here by this budget is the reduction, the ongoing reduction of public transport bus services. And I'm really concerned that resignation has set in, that we will not find bus drivers in the near future, medium future, or even the medium to long-term future. And I have fired some quite stern emails to Auckland Transport in the last week and a bit on this. It worries me immensely. If there's any one thing, well, there are many things in this budget to be concerned about, but one thing that worries me is how we appear to be stepping away from amping the public transport bus system up at a time we need to do that. We are stepping away, and there's some resignation setting in that we will not be finding those much needed bus drivers. I'll leave it at that, Mayor. Let's go and see what our communities think, but there are lots of issues to be focusing on there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darby. I agree with everything you said, particularly about the stormwater stuff there. And it's interesting that Auckland Transport have their rating engineers are in fact impeding the better performance of our stream daylighting. So things are complicated. I will take your advice with regard to carefully getting the wording right, because that's what I'm trying to do. Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting this and treating it as a procedural matter to enable progress in our local government mandated annual plan. My vote should not be interpreted as a blank check supporting this budget, because I do not. I do not support the proposed sale of Auckland International Airport shares, and I yet again place on record my protest at the lack of detailed financial information, which is our right to demand as decision makers here. I agree with the comments about Auckland Transport, and I would go one step further, that Auckland Transport, which consumes some 70% of our expenditure, is failing in public transport and failing in other matters as well. And this, I think, we need to address. So on that note, I will conclude. Just one more point. The 295 million crisis, budget shortfall crisis we are facing is not a one-off. This is systemic in the system, and can only, just bear in mind that last year there was $127 million shortfall, fortunately bridged over by a government handout somehow related to Three Waters. There is a systemic problem in our system which we are obliged to get to the bottom of, and not just sell our assets to fudge the whole question. We're here to sort it out, and that's what we need to do. And this is what I'll be telling people when I front this consultation in my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. So I've got no more, so I'm just going to sum up a little bit here. I'm not mad about making cuts either, but there was a $295 million hole. And so I notice when we spend like mad, it's the council's budget, but when we've got to save money, it's the mayor's budget. This is the mayor's budget because we've got to save money. I accept some of the other things. I look on page 46, and you know, our operating costs have risen $278 million above the long-term plan, and they've gone $168 million from last year. I am yet to be convinced that management have extracted all of the savings that they can. If we can extract them there, it takes a bit of pressure off some of the things that the public obviously want. We have $924 million under growth on page 48, and yet there is no growth. So there are some big questions. We are where we are. This has got to be got out. We are asking the public to understand that we are in a rock and a hard place. And so thank you for all your stuff. We are now about to put the vote to take this thing to consultation. The consultation period will undoubtedly produce people who and responses that are at variance to what we're proposing. But you can't just want the things you want without giving up something or other else. That's the tricky part of this. So it's consultation, it's not a Christmas gift thing we're going for. So I'm now going to put the motion which has been proposed and seconded. I'll put it just to see whether I'll get a carry with ayes, otherwise we'll go to a, whatchamacallit? Right, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. There's a lot of ayes there. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Jane, please record my abstention.
Councillor Fletcher?
Councillor Fletcher is abstaining. Not quite what that means, but good.
I don't have confidence.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. We've got a couple more things to go, which are not quite so contentious. we can proceed, but it's only 12:30, and so I'm going to push on. I'd like to thank all the staff involved in the work in getting that last thing ready. Nobody's really enjoying this. It's tough, but it's what we have to do, and we can't just put it off. That's quite clear. So the next thing we're doing is the item 9. Bloody hell. There was a one. Right, to recommend the governing body approval of the proposal and supporting information for changes to the revenue and financing policy and the Maori land rates remission and postponement policy. These are not particularly big items, but they are important. And Andrew Duncan's here to talk to these, but I will just see whether or not, if there is a mover and a seconder for these. If nobody else, I'll move these because they've got to be done. Please second this. Thank you.
I will, Your Worship.
Can we clarify who the seconder was, please?
Councillor Hills put his hand up straight away.
Okay, Councillor Hills, thank you.
Righto, now we'll have a presentation. Is this you, Andrew? Speak up when you do it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it is. These are 2 procedural recommendations to adopt consultation material for decisions that you made in December. We have to amend the revenue and financing policy to allow us to pause the long-term differential strategy that's part of the proposal you just adopted for the budget, which has to be consulted on separately for legal reasons, but it will be done alongside the annual budget and it will be integrated into that. You've also decided to make a minor amendment to the Maori land remission policy so we can fairly treat development of Papakainga on general land, similarly to Papakainga on Maori freehold land. That consultation also has to be done separately, but it will be done alongside and the 2 will be connected. Any questions?
Okay, is there any questions? These are fairly procedural and they're definitely these things are working to the advantage of Maori, not to the disadvantage of Maori. So, and they have been discussed before. We have had input from the IMSB on this and they're in support of this. They were at least a month ago. I don't think there's any change to that. Nobody's put their hand up to speak on this.
Comments?
Any comments on this? On that basis, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour of aye, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
To the contrary? Carried. Thank you.
There's no extraordinary items.
There are no extraordinary items.
Close the meeting.
So I'm going to declare the meeting closed and I want to thank all staff, all councillors. I know that this has been difficult for some of you. Thank you for your input. I know that you've all thought hard about this and we've got more thinking to come. And I'm looking forward to the local boards taking a good say and being involved in the have your own says, because they should be pretty close to what we were trying to get to with proper feedback. So thanks everybody. We can have a break. I need one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.